നമ്മുടെ ഓണത്തിന് പിന്നിൽ മറഞ്ഞിരിക്കുന്ന ഒരു ചരിത്രമുണ്ടെങ്കിലോ? I mean, have you ever stopped to wonder if the stories we all grow up with are just the tip of the iceberg? What if there is a deeply hidden, ancient history behind our beloved festival of Onam? Just think about this for a second. Why does Kerala, pretty much uniquely among Indian traditions, worship a defeated Asura king as their absolute greatest, most beloved ruler? It literally breaks all the traditional rules of mythology. So today, we are going on a bit of a historical detective investigation to find out exactly why.
Welcome to This Explainer. We're going to unpack a super multi-layered hypothesis that connects Kerala's favorite festival to places you would probably never expect. We're looking way beyond the local agrarian roots today, tracing potential connections that stretch all the way across the Arabian Sea right back to the ancient Middle East. It's this incredible winding journey through history, linguistics, and even genetics. All right, here is our roadmap for today's investigation. We'll hit the Mahabali Mystery, dive into Assyrian linguistic links, explore the Asura-Deva divide, look at ziggurats and ancestry, unpack the Parashuma paradox, and wrap up with a multi-layered tradition. Let's kick things off with Section 1, the Mahabali Mystery, and whether this is an Aryan tradition or a Dravidian festival. So, there are some wildly conflicting claims out there about where the Mahabali tradition actually comes from. For instance, one of the sources we looked at adamantly claims that Onam is actually an Aryan tradition. They point straight to an ancient Assyrian emperor from the region we now know as Iran and Iraq, named Assurbanipal. The narrative goes that Assurbanipal was an emperor famous for his justice and the sheer prosperity of his reign. The claim here is that as ancient peoples migrated toward India, the story of this golden era came right along with them, and the name Assurbanipal morphed over time into Mahabali. Now, we are definitely not taking sides on this, but we absolutely have to look at the fascinating overlaps that caused people to propose this theory in the first place. And this right here? This perfectly illustrates the core paradox at the heart of Onam. If you step back and look at the wider Indian and Vaishnava traditions, the star of Thiruvonam, or Shravana, is Vishnu. Specifically, it's a sacred day dedicated to his avatar, Vamana, who famously defeated the Asuras. But in the Kerala tradition, we celebrate that exact same day as the triumphant return of the defeated Asura king, Mahabali. In traditional Puranic texts, Asuras are almost always the villains, yet in Kerala's collective memory, Mahabali is remembered as the ultimate, ideal king who ruled over a totally egalitarian, just, and prosperous society. It is a complete cultural inversion. It's basically flipped upside down. And that tells us that Kerala's history has some really unique missing pieces. Moving right along to Section 2, let's see how linguistic clues might actually connect these incredibly distant worlds. Okay, this is where it gets really fun. Prominent Indologists like Ascoparpala have put forward a very serious scholarly hypothesis. Check out this linguistic chain. The main deity and the main city of the ancient Assyrian Empire was named Ashur. As Proto-Indo-Aryan cultures rubbed shoulders with the Near East, some scholars think this heavy influence shaped the Indo-Iranian word Asura. Now hold that thought and jump over to Mesopotamia, where Bel was an Akkadian title meaning lord, something they used for their major gods. So could a naming environment like Ashur-Bel have culturally drifted all the way into the Indian tradition as Asura-Bali and eventually become Mahabali? While it's not 100% proven fact, you have to admit it's a remarkably compelling way to trace ancient cultural contact. Section 3. To really grasp how the word Asura evolved, we need to look at a massive theological split. Just look at this ancient religious schism between India and Iran. They actually share a common Indo-Iranian root, but somewhere along the line, they went through a huge theological breakup. In the Indian tradition, Deva means divine, and Sura gets associated with demons or the enemies of the gods. But jump over to the ancient Iranian tradition, and it is the exact opposite. Ahura, which is their equivalent of Asura, like an Ahura Mazda, is divine, while Deva is the word that represents evil. This is huge because it proves that Asura wasn't always a bad word. Actually, in the earliest Vedic times, it literally meant a powerful divine being. All right, Section 4. Let's pivot from language and mythology to some hard, physical clues, architecture and human genetics. So during Onam, many Keralites worship through Kakadapan, right? Also known as Onathapan. Think about how it's made. It's this small, stepped, conical, or pyramidal clay structure. Now picture an ancient Mesopotamian ziggurat. They are these massive, stepped pyramids built to symbolize divine presence. The visual resemblance is honestly striking. Is it totally out of the realm of possibility that the distinct shape of Thrukkarapan is a distant surviving cultural memory of West Asian religious architecture? We already know the Malabar coast had extensive booming trade networks with Arabia and Mesopotamia. It definitely deserves a closer look. And that ancient contact deeply shaped the people of Kerala too. You'll hear some claims out there trying to label Keralites as Turkic or Iranian based on physical traits like height or thick beards. On the flip side, others insist on this idea of a biologically pure Dravidian race. Well, the science tells a much more nuanced story. Genetic evidence pulled from the ancient Patanam archaeological site right near Muziris reveals the Keralites actually have a really complex mix. It's South Asian ancestry combined with ancient West Eurasian-related components. This unique genetic admixture is exactly how the Keralite profile subtly differs from other broader Dravidian populations. So, the whole idea of a purely Aryan or purely Dravidian biological race, completely debunked. Kerala has literally been a melting pot of global human connections for millennia. Section 5 brings us to a mythological puzzle that seriously complicates Kerala's sacred history. Let's talk about the Parashurama paradox. Both Vamana and Parashurama are avatars of Vishnu, and both are deeply, fundamentally linked to Kerala's origin myths. Vamana, as we know, is famous for defeating the Asura king Mahabali and pushing him into the underworld. But then you have Parashurama, who, legend has it, actually reclaimed the land of Kerala from the sea. Here's the catch, though. Parashurama's great mythological enemies weren't the Asuras. They were the Kshatriya kings who he wiped out in 21 campaigns. So why on earth does Kerala's sacred geography hold both of these conflicting traditions? The sources we reviewed suggest a really fascinating historical hypothesis for this. Think about it as a political timeline. First, the Asura power of Mahabali gets marginalized. Fast forward, and a dominant Kshatriya political power rises up. But when Parashurama comes in and utterly destroys that Kshatriya power, it creates a massive political vacuum. So could Parashurama's anti-Kshatriya campaigns have inadvertently created a safe haven in Kerala? A place where those older, suppressed, politically marginalized Asura traditions could just quietly survive and eventually flourish in the new social structure? It's kind of a brilliant way to explain why Mahabali is still so deeply revered here. Finally, Section 6. How do we take all these puzzle pieces and actually synthesize the past? Well, this timeline shows that Onam didn't just pop up out of nowhere. It's a multi-layered evolution. It likely starts with ancient Mesopotamian concepts of divine kingship traveling over on those maritime trade routes. Then, that massive Indo-Iranian religious split gives a whole new context to the word Asura. Next, the Bali mythology evolves specifically into the story of an Asura king. Later down the line, the Parashurama legend establishes Kerala as this unique, protected, sacred land, allowing all these marginalized traditions to safely blend with Tamil and Vaishnava influences. And the result of all that history? It's the modern Onam tradition we celebrate today, where ancient, echoing mythological memories blend seamlessly with those vibrant, physical community celebrations we all love, the incredible energy of the Valamkali boat race, and the pure grit of the Vadambali tug of war. It's all connected. I want to leave you with this provocative thought. In our human desire to neatly categorize history, we always want things to be super simple, right? We want Onam to be purely Dravidian or purely Aryan. But what if the truth is so much more beautiful than that? What if our beloved festival is actually a vast, multi-layered memory of ancient interactions that connect the people of Kerala to the wider ancient world? Next time you celebrate Onam, just remember, you might actually be partaking in one of the oldest, most global traditions in human history. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the history around you.